Ava Rowe was just trying to keep her failing hardware store alive when an 82-year-old man walked in asking for a janitor job. She gave him a chance, but within days, quiet changes gave way to unsettling questions, and the truth he'd been hiding for decades would change everything for Ava. Hi, and welcome to Unrevealed Whispers. Today we bring you another heartfelt story. Let's begin. You'll have the rest by next Friday, I promise, Ava said, pulling open the worn cash drawer. Miguel, her part-time employee, gave a tired smile. Not angry, just resigned. That's what you said last Friday. I know, she said softly. It's just, the gas bill came in, and the supplier wants their balance cleared, or they won't send parts. Miguel nodded, but the way he wiped his hands on his apron and avoided eye contact said more than words. He didn't want to leave. Not really, but he couldn't afford to stay. If I find something else, I might have to take it, he said. Ava nodded. I get it. The bell above the front door jingled as he walked out, leaving her alone in the silence of the hardware store. She looked around at the empty aisles and flickering lights, shelves half-stocked, a busted fan they couldn't afford to replace. She ran her hand along the counter, worn smooth from decades of customer hands. It hadn't always been like this. Her father, Bill Rowe, ran the place like clockwork. Everyone in town knew him, respected him. For most of her childhood, business was steady, and so was life, until the day it wasn't. Ava still remembered overhearing the late-night argument, her father shouting on the phone in the garage, pacing in circles. His business partner, he said, had made a deal behind his back, something that cost them a major account. Trust broken, business fractured. The man disappeared from their lives, and the store never really recovered. Her dad tried to patch things together, but stress chipped away at his health, and by the time Ava graduated college, she was coming home to hospital visits and overdue bills. When he passed, she promised to carry the torch, to make the store what it once was. But some promises are heavier than they sound. Now suppliers didn't return her calls. The town's big box competitor 2 miles down the highway offered faster service and online orders. And Miguel, her last part-timer, was preparing to walk. Ava opened the ledger again, hoping numbers might magically rearrange into something manageable. They didn't. The bell above the front door jingled. An older man stood just inside the entrance. He wasn't browsing. He wasn't looking for a part or asking for directions. He stood still, eyes scanning the shop slowly, like he'd just stepped into some place he hadn't seen in a very long time. He wore a plain windbreaker, zipped halfway up, loose jeans, a ball cap faded from sun and time, late 70s, maybe early 80s. He moved carefully but with purpose. Ava cleared her throat. Can I help you with something? He hesitated, then stepped forward with a quiet nod. I was wondering if you might be hiring. She blinked. You're looking for work? His smile was faint, barely there. Something part-time, stocking shelves, sweeping up. I don't mind the hours. For a beat, Ava said nothing. Not out of rudeness, but because she wasn't sure if he was serious. People in town came in with odd questions sometimes. Lonely folks mostly. But this was different. He meant it. I'm sorry, she said gently. It's just, we're not exactly doing great. I can barely keep the lights on. He gave a small shrug. Don't need much, just something steady. I've worked in shops before, know my way around tools. Ava studied him for a long second. He didn't flinch or ramble to fill the silence, just waited. Her instinct should have said no. Too old, no budget, liability questions. She could already imagine the comments, but something quiet inside her hesitated. The same part that had stopped her from quitting last month, or closing early the week before. We open at 7, sweeping, dusting, maybe helping restock. He nodded unbothered, like someone who already understood the work and had decided it was worth doing. It's minimum wage, she added. That's fine, he said. Whatever you think's fair. She paused. Your name? He smiled again, just enough. Call me Walt. Ava wasn't sure what she'd expected. Walt sounded simple, uncomplicated, almost too neat for someone like him. Coat threadbare at the cuffs, eyes tired, posture just a little too careful, like a man trying not to take up space. From the far aisle, Jordan, her part-timer, leaned on the counter, eyebrows raised as he watched Walt step outside with the broom. "You seriously hired him?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "You sure that's safe?" Ava shrugged without looking up. "He's not climbing ladders, just helping out. I mean, he's like 80. What if he drops a wrench and throws out his back?" She gave him a dry look. "We dropped your paycheck last week and you bounced back fine." Jordan held up his hands. "Just saying." But Ava had already turned back to the register, eyes drifting to the window. Walt swept slow but steady. Every few strokes, he'd stop and line the broom head just right, making sharp, neat edges where the dust met the concrete. He came back after lunch and kept going. No griping, no small talk. Just fixed what needed fixing. A jam drawer here, a squeaky hinge there. Noticed the step stool had a loose bolt. Tightened it without being asked. By the time she flipped the sign to closed, Ava realized she'd never told him to take a break. He never asked for one either. Still, she kept an eye on him. 82 and still working. Maybe he had bills. Maybe no one left to lean on. Could have been pride or just plain need. Whatever it was, she didn't pry. She knew what it felt like, to carry too much and pretend you weren't. So she gave him space, but she made sure the heavy stuff stayed on her side. No ladder work, nothing risky, not out of pity, just a quiet kind of respect, the kind you offer someone who's clearly seen more than they ever said. The next day he arrived 10 minutes early. Again, same coat, same nod. By the third morning, he was waiting by the door when Ava unlocked it, coffee in hand. One for him, one for her. "It was on sale," he said simply, offering the cup. The coffee surprised her, not because it was free, but because it was thoughtful. By the time Ava got the lights on and the register humming, Walt was already rearranging the paintbrush display like he'd been doing it for years. Customers still trickled in like a leaky faucet, mostly locals, mostly old-timers who remembered Ava's dad and weren't sure what to make of her. They started noticing Walt by day 3, not right away, but eventually they caught on. The slow-moving figure wiping down shelves, sorting screws, moving bags of salt with hands that trembled only slightly. "Who's the new guy?" one man asked, squinting. "Thought maybe he wandered in from the senior center." Ava gave a tight smile. "He works here." The man blinked. "No kidding." Later that afternoon, another customer leaned on the counter and nodded toward Walt, who was restocking sandpaper. "You hiring retirees now, huh?" he said, chuckling. "Guess that's one way to dodge payroll taxes." Ava didn't laugh. Someone else muttered, not quietly enough, "Hope you've got good liability insurance." Another, "He even remember what a ratchet set is?" Walt heard it all. He didn't react, just kept working, one shelf at a time, like the words couldn't find a way in. But Ava saw it, in the way his shoulders stiffened, how he paused just a beat too long before bending to lift a bucket. That smile he always wore stayed there, but tonight it felt tighter around the edges, like someone trying to stay small in a room that kept shrinking. Like someone used to being underestimated and carrying it like a familiar weight. That evening, after the last customer left, Ava pretended to tally receipts but found herself watching Walt. He was rearranging a socket wrench display, slowly but with intention, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. He didn't move fast, but he never stopped moving. Never once checked the clock. Never once asked when he could leave. The next morning, she noticed the old receipt printer humming softly, the one that hadn't worked in 2 years. She'd meant to toss it. Now it printed clean slips without jamming. She never asked. A few days later, she walked in early and found Walt already there, not near the front, but in the back office. The door was half open. He was wiping dust from the shelf above the filing cabinet, his coat draped neatly over a chair. At first, her stomach tightened. No one went back there, not even Jason when he still worked weekends. But Walt wasn't snooping. He moved carefully, respectfully, like he'd done this before, somewhere else a long time ago. Like he was tending to a room that meant something. He looked up, smiled faintly. "Figured I'd straighten up a bit." She nodded, didn't say much. But after that, she started finding things where they hadn't been before, in the best way. Walt didn't just stop there. Ava began to notice more. Not bad behavior, not anything inappropriate, just little things, quiet things. He swept the floor, cleaned the back sink, fixed things that had been broken so long she'd stopped noticing they were broken at all. And more than once she caught him pausing near the old bulletin board, the one her father had put up when the store first opened. The edges were curling now. A few faded notes still clung to it, pinned in place by rusted tacks. Most people ignored it. Walt didn't. He'd straighten it gently, run his thumb over the edge of the frame, like he remembered exactly where it used to hang, like it still meant something he couldn't quite say. By the next week, strange things began happening. A supply order she'd written off as lost suddenly showed up, stacked neatly near the back door. No call, no invoice, just the paid stamped across the top. She thought it was a mistake, but the boxes had their logo, their supplier. Then came a call from the electric company, the same one that denied 3 payment extensions in a row. This time, they granted one. No questions, just a polite confirmation. The following day, the landlord's assistant popped in with a forced smile. "Hey, just checking in. No changes to your lease. For now." Ava frowned. "Wait, what changes?" The woman shrugged. "Oh, nothing. I just figured I'd say that before rumors started." Rumors? Ava glanced toward Walt, who was reorganizing a shelf of drill bits like none of this touched him. He never brought any of it up, and yet every day he showed up early, even on days he wasn't scheduled. A full week passed. Nothing major had changed. Sales weren't booming. Customers still came in with hesitation. But Ava felt steadier, like something had shifted underneath her, without warning. No miracles, no windfalls, just a quiet pressure lifting, little by little. And every time she looked at Walt, humming quietly to himself, sleeves rolled up, wiping down counters like the store's soul depended on it, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in months. Possibility, but also something else. A tension she couldn't place. Because the way he looked around, the way he moved through the aisles, it was like this place belonged to him too. And that, more than anything, made her nervous. She started watching more closely. Small things. How he lingered near the corner where her dad used to keep spare ledgers. How his hands moved instinctively toward tools they hadn't sold in years. Once she caught him fixing a loose hinge on the stockroom door without needing to ask where they kept the screws. She didn't question it out loud, not yet, but a part of her had already begun drawing lines between dots. 3 days later, just after closing, the answer found her. Ava was wiping down the counter when she realized Walt wasn't up front. He always stuck close to the register at the end of the day, like it was part of his routine. But tonight, the space was empty. No footsteps, no sound. Then she noticed the back office door was open. She paused, then walked in. Walt stood near the filing cabinet, his coat folded over the same chair he always used. But he wasn't cleaning. He was holding something. An old photo. The one that had been buried under receipts and spare parts in her father's drawer. It was her dad and Walt. Younger, smiling, arms around each other like family. Ava stopped in the doorway. Walt looked at her, quiet and steady. "I didn't come here by accident," he said, meeting her eyes. Ava crossed her arms. "Okay." He nodded slowly, like bracing himself to lift something heavier than any toolbox. 37 years ago, your father and I opened this store together. The air seemed to still, not colder, just heavier. "You're," she started. "Walter Hughes," he said quietly. "He called me Walt. We were business partners, best friends once." Ava's fingers curled against the desk edge. "My dad said you two had a falling out." "We did," Walt said, "and it was on me." He looked down for a moment, then back up. "We opened a second location too fast. I pushed for it. Borrowed too much, trusted the wrong vendors. Your dad wanted to slow down. I didn't listen." He paused, jaw tightening. "When things got bad, I panicked. Pulled out. Legally clean, but not right. Left him holding the mess." Ava stared at him, silent. "He lost nearly everything," Walt said. "Sold his truck. Took out a second mortgage. and still kept this place going for 10 more years. His voice dropped. I found out later. Tried calling. Tried showing up. He wouldn't see me. I don't blame him. Her voice came out small, dry. You waited 37 years. I waited too long, Walt said. He passed before I could tell him I was sorry. He set the photo gently on the desk and looked up. So I came here the only way I knew how. Not as the man who wrecked things, but as someone willing to make it right. Quietly, steadily, with whatever time I've got left. Ava blinked, throat tight. You should have told me, she said, her voice soft and shaky. I know, Walt said. But would you have hired me if I had? She didn't answer. He didn't need her to. She looked at him. Really looked. And suddenly everything clicked into place. The plumbing repairs, the mysteriously restocked inventory, the supplier who'd started returning calls out of nowhere, the quiet feeling that the store somehow had begun to steady itself again. What do you mean you've been making things right? She asked. Walt reached down and picked up a manila envelope from the chair beside him. He slid it across the desk. Every vendor, every utility, back taxes, even next year's lease. It's all in there. Receipts, confirmations, no tricks. The store's clean now. Ava picked it up, her hands trembling as she opened the flap. Inside, signed invoices, stamped letters from vendors, copies of tax filings, all neat, complete, undeniable. I didn't come for forgiveness, Walt said quietly. I came to carry the weight I should have carried back then. Your father didn't deserve what I left him with, and neither do you. Ava stared down at the papers, then looked up at him. Not the man who swept floors or fixed squeaky drawers, but the one from the photo, her father's partner, his failure, and maybe now, his redemption. She didn't speak. Instead, she turned and walked to the register, opened a drawer and pulled out a folded slip of paper, her father's handwriting. She walked back and handed it to him. Walt unfolded the note, read it once, then again. The note read, If something happens to me, don't carry it all alone. This place was never built by one man. If Walt ever comes back, tell him I didn't hate him, just didn't know how to face him. His hand trembled as he folded the paper. His voice caught. I didn't deserve his grace. Ava swallowed. Maybe not then, she said, her voice low. But you showed up and stayed. My dad would have seen that. Walt looked at her, not sure what to say, eyes shining in a way that caught her off guard. And I see it too, she added. I've seen it every day since you walked through that door. He didn't speak, just nodded once, slow and full of weight. The store changed after that, not overnight, but in ways that mattered. Customers kept coming. They lingered longer, bought more. Some even brought their kids in, pointing out corners and shelves, sharing stories of how the place used to be. And Walt never stopped working. But now he did more than sweep and fix things. He coached Ava through vendor calls, helped set margins, rewired an old shelving unit, even brought in a few old contacts who still owed him favors. He never took a dollar more. When she tried to insist, he shook his head. I broke something that mattered, he said. Helping you fix it? That's more than enough. Ava didn't argue after that. She just made sure there was hot coffee waiting for him every morning, and that the stool behind the register, her dad's old spot, was never left empty. Over time, people stopped calling Walt the janitor. They called him the old partner, or just Walt, with a warmth that hadn't been there before. And one Saturday, as Ava finished tallying the books and realized they were finally out of the red, she glanced toward the back, where Walt was tinkering with a busted socket. He caught her eye and gave a small nod, like he already knew. She smiled. We did it, she said. Walt grinned. Told you it was still a good store. And in that moment, it wasn't just the store that felt whole again. It was the years between them, the silence, the regret, all folding into something quieter, something softer, not forgotten, but finally forgiven. Thanks for spending a few quiet minutes with this story. If it stirred something in you, chances are the next one will too. We share these moments because they remind us what really matters. So if you don't want to miss the next one, go ahead and hit subscribe. We'd love to have you here for the next chapter.